Really? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Was It Good? My name is Bob, and today we're going to be talking about the brand new movie over on Netflix, Damsel. This is a movie that was directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, who directed 28 Weeks Later. It has a cast featuring Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things and the Enola Holmes series. It also has Ray Winston, Angela Bassett, and Robin White in it. Now, Netflix has been very hit or miss when it comes to its movies. But with that cast and the fact that it's the number one movie over on Netflix right now, I was thinking, how bad could this thing be? And all I can say is this was an extremely frustrating movie for me. And because it was frustrating, I've got to talk some spoilers when I get into my review. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want it to be spoiled for you, this is a good time to go ahead and stop the video, go watch the movie, and then come back and watch the video. But I'm not sure if you really need to go watch the movie. We'll get into that, but this is your warning. The plot of this movie revolves around Elodie as she's set up by her father to marry a rich prince in order to help the people of her land who've been going through a lot of hardships. And when she gets to the country where she's going to be marrying this prince, everything seems okay, but it quickly turns out to be a trap. And it turns out that the family that she's marrying into has an agreement with a fire breathing dragon that requires three sacrifices every generation in order to appease this agreement. And Elodie happens to be one of them. And she's thrown into the cave where this dragon is, and she has to use her own wits to end up surviving. The problem I have with this movie is that there were a lot of pieces there for this to actually be a good movie. And instead, the movie is so focused on trying to subvert expectations that it ends up not subverting expectations at all. Right from the get go, they tell you that this is going to be a different type of movie. There's a monologue by Elodie that says that there are a lot of tales of chivalry and a knight who comes to save a princess, but that this isn't going to be one of those tales. So, right off the get go, instead of subverting expectations like they hope that they're going to do, they end up just telling you what's going to end up happening because at no point do you think anybody's going to end up saving her. You already know she's going to end up saving herself. I think a much more interesting storyline would have been if maybe instead of having a Prince Charming save her, the way you could have subverted expectations is maybe that once she goes missing, her father finds out about it and ends up going to look for her and ends up sacrificing himself so she can end up escaping. I think that would have been much more interesting and would have shown a great bond between a father and a daughter. That would have subverted expectations and been a much more interesting storyline. Another problem that I had with this movie is that there was no setup for the payoff. Part of the setup or part of the payoff of this movie is that Elodie ends up defeating the dragon, and she does so with the sword and having to stab the dragon and everything. And it just there was no setup for any of this. The first time we meet Elodie, she ends up chopping wood. That's how we find her. She's chopping wood. We later see that she's a little sassy and she's able to ride a horse. Otherwise, there is absolutely no setup, no hint that she has the ability to be able to fight off a fire breathing dragon. It makes absolutely no sense that this could happen. There's a payoff, but there's no setup. And because there's no setup, there's no emotion to it once it does happen. Another huge problem I had with this movie was the father. The stepmother, who's played by Angela Bassett, actually realizes that there's something wrong and she questions the marriage. But the father, turns out, he's actually okay with this. He knew what was going to happen. He was okay the entire time with what was going to happen with Elodie. And it's only when finally he feels guilty that he shows up out of nowhere, tries to save her, but he ends up dying in the process. And there's this little moment that they have between the two of them, but there's no payoff to it because the setup to it was that he was a jerk. He was responsible for the situation she ends up getting into. And so, because of that, I hated what they did with the father. I think they could have done something much more interesting. And another big problem that I had was the dragon itself. The dragon, they tried to set up as a sympathetic character. It turns out that the reason why this family had an agreement with this dragon was because that one of their ancestors had killed the dragon's younglings and or the little dragons, and because of that the dragon requires three sacrifices every generation, and these sacrifices have been going on for centuries. So when we find out the reason why the dragon is doing this, it's still, there's to me no payoff or no emotion behind it, because the dragon's been killing women for centuries. So how am I supposed to feel anything for this dragon when the dragon responded the way that she did? It just, I really didn't like it. Overall, the plot I thought of this movie had the the pieces there to be something very interesting, and instead most of it just fell flat. The acting for the movie was okay. There was nothing really to write home about with the acting performances. Millie Bobby Brown, she did the best that she could. You could tell she was giving it her all, but it wasn't that great of a movie. So as a result, I don't think her performance really was that great either. Again, it's I don't think it was her because you could tell she was giving it her all, but it had more to do with the movie itself. Nick Robinson, who plays Prince Henry, he was just there to look pretty and throw Elodie into the pit. Otherwise, there was no point in him even being there. Ray Winston, who plays Lord Bayford, Elodie's father. You already heard my rant about the father. I didn't like what they did with his character. His performance, it seemed like he was phoning it in. He was okay. Again, I don't think he was bad, but he was okay. The biggest waste to me in this movie was easily Angela Bassett. What a fantastic actress she is. And she was there to pretty much just protest the wedding and say that she didn't like the other family. Now, she does have a pretty good scene with Robin White, right? And we'll get into that in a second. But otherwise, there was no point in her even being there. What a waste of a fantastic actress. Robin Wright plays Queen Isabel. Now, I think she was actually okay. I think she was actually pretty good in the role. She was very manipulative throughout the movie, and I kind of liked what they did with her. And she does have a scene with Angela Bassett where she talks down to Angela Bassett, basically telling her, "Oh, oh yeah, you need to always remember your station in life and remember where you came from." Basically saying you are beneath me. And that particular scene I thought was well acted, and her performance I thought was good in that spot. The voice of the dragon was, I'm sure I'm going to butcher this name, Shore Agdashlu, who we know from The Expanse and other movies out there. Her voice as the dragon was pretty good, but again, I didn't find the dragon to be a sympathetic character, so some of the performance fell flat on me because, again, it was hard to see the dragon as sympathetic. Overall, the acting was okay. Nothing great, but okay. The look of the film wasn't too bad. I think some of it actually looked kind of cool. Some of the stuff they did with the dragon in the cave, as well as when the dragon would be attacking people, I thought looked kind of cool. And then other spots, it didn't look so great at all. Costumes were okay. Overall, the look of the film was okay. I would say a little bit better than average. I wasn't very entertained by this movie. Like I said, I was very frustrated with it because I think the pieces were there for this to be actually kind of a good movie, and it wasn't. I found myself checking to see how much time was left on the movie, or I was struggling to not fall asleep. So I was disappointed in this because I think it could have been much better than what it was. Was it good? Not really. It wasn't horrible. I didn't think it was absolutely horrible, but I didn't think it was good at all. But maybe you disagree with me, and that's okay. Why don't you tell me why you disagree with me? If you've seen this and you think that this was the best movie that you've ever seen, why don't you tell me about it? Go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section below. It's okay if we disagree. All I ask is that when you leave a comment, let's not be disagreeable. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next review.